Hey everyone! So I did a recent viewing of Jordan Peterson's and Sam Harris's debate in Vancouver. Both parts, 4 hours, just a little light reading or viewing. And so I just wanted to, I guess, make a response video of my, thoughts of it. And so here we go. So in the debate, I found out that this is under a huge misunderstanding or miscommunication, and which kind of was a bummer. And I would, if this communication was taken out, I wonder what the dynamic would have been. But when going to, I'm just gonna like pretend I'm talking to each person, Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris. So I'm gonna start with Sam Harris. So with him, his argument is saying simply that religion is terrible, irrational, and it has all these bad side effects, and justifies people like killing people and raping and just everything terrible imaginable. And so, which is contrary to what he calls is good, for the beneficial nature of humanity. And whatever's connected to the negative side of humanity, religion is paired right next to it. And so in saying that, that's kind of like his first tier. His second tier would be, well, can we do good without the rationality of religion to encourage us to do good for a greater cause? What can't we just do good for the sake of doing good without religion to I guess encourage us to do that good? Because then on that second or on that first tier, there's that terrible side effect of what religion can do under this. You cannot question the authority, and you therefore act out that way. And so it would just seem natural. Can we somehow divorce ourselves from religion that seems to cause so many of these problems and makes it difficult for people to resolve things? Because he was talking about like between Israel and Palestine, but that was under a little bit of a different sphere. They were talking about the value of something and having two different values over a piece of land. But even still, just kind of the general idea of we cannot come to a consensus because we have these unquestionable authorities, and since we're not going to find a middle ground or divorce ourselves or question the authoritative structure of our religion, we're not going to have peace. And so he's like, is there a way to divorce from that and just do good for the sake of doing good? But then his third level, I would say, is then we to know what to do good, because this is what everyone who keeps poking at his argument is like, okay, so where does this good come from? And he says it's like a moral intuition, just to know what is good. And the biggest part of his debate is like how science can prove, I guess, morality. And I guess I haven't really heard him like tie that together, but I guess he kind of talks about how we go through life through different experiences, and then we quickly find out how one thing is damaging and one thing is good, and so we should start leaning ourselves toward the good side. And I guess one example, he was like putting our hand on a stove. We immediately know that is bad. That's not talking about morality necessarily, but we get to figure out through those experiences what's good and bad, and through a moral intuition, we just kind of know how things ought to be, and so therefore we should pursue that. And I guess so. I have a couple, or just like a question for him. Is that one? So let's say gangs, for instance. Gangs don't operate really under a religious structure, yet they do things. They do horrible things once in a while. They're like shooting people up and all whatever. But it's not for the good of a religious reasoning. But they have a moral intuition that they need to prove themselves. Moral intuition that they need to strengthen their gang. And if they do these things, shooting or whatever, being tough, they are displaying the gang as a stronghold, and they're doing it for the sake of for a group. And I guess that can be taken, well, maybe that's similar dynamics to a religion. They just don't have a god or an authoritative figure. Sure, but they still don't have a religious structure, and they are operating under this moral intuition, and they think what they're doing is right, and they don't have a religious structure that will be guiding their way. And so just kind of curious to that. And so with Jordan Peterson, with Sam Harris, I would say I completely agree with his top part. Right, Sam Harris, as his top part about like how religions have this terrible side effect. Yes, and then is there a way to divorce ourselves from that? Well, that would be great. But then it's just his final argument is like what that thing is. It has to be more than just intuition, because, for instance, I think Sam doesn't really recognize potentially his cultural influence. What seems so natural to him wouldn't be so natural to someone in the Middle East. So for instance, so there's three different kinds of cultures. There's powers cultures. There are guilt innocent cultures, and then there are shame cultures. And so what would be wrong in a guilt innocent culture, which would be ours, the West, wouldn't be seen as wrong in a shame culture. So in our culture, we would see lying as terrible, and that would be in our intuition, I guess you could say, that it is a bad thing. But then if you go to a honor shame culture, lying is perfectly fine, because their internal clockwork is saying that for the better of their family, for them, it is better to lie to keep that honor there. And so they completely justify that action, but that would be seen as completely terrible here, because guilt, we want justice, and that kind of righteous justice, and so that would be seen as terrible. So it's just kind of like, okay, so what he says, they couldn't quite get onto like him is that it was a universal thing, but it would be interesting to hear his thoughts on like, okay, so how do you have these cultural differences where like one action could be taken two different ways based on how you grow up. So back to what I was saying with Sam Harris, I think he doesn't recognize the social influence that he has, which is actually predominantly Christian in America, and I think he's from America. If not, sorry, but even just anywhere in the West, we kind of grew up from this Christian sphere, and I think that has shaped some of his natural intuitive morals, where if he grew up somewhere else, he would have a completely different set of them. And I just want to touch one more thing with him on that first tier about just religions doing terrible things, and in the midst of that, yes, like people who are Christian. So to him, Christians, Muslims, all of them are the same. He has a little different perspective, I think, on Buddhism, because some religions, I guess, have a more ethical structure, but it's not necessarily religion, but they briefly touched on it, so I'm not sure exactly what his truer thoughts about that. But to more of the theistic structures, they're all the same to him. All right, so going to Jordan Peterson, good man. He's my people. Just how quirky he is, I love him. So this is how I describe Jordan Peterson, and this is where the miscommunication between them happens, I would say. So Jordan goes out to explore these different religions. He explores their claims. And if you guys know Doctor Who and like the TARDIS, so every religion claims that the TARDIS is bigger on the inside. Their TARDIS is bigger on the inside. And so he says, that's an interesting claim. So he goes pursuing, trying to figure that out, or try to, see their claim, is it right or not? And so as he, pulls apart their religious structure and like their books and whatever, I think he finds that their claims about it being bigger in the inside is wrong. And he's I think kind of disappointed about it. It's like, why, people are having these really or very broad, or not broad, they're very big, for lack of a better term, claims about their religion, and they're not following through, I suppose. So as he continues to rip these things apart, because he's very good at breaking things down and also playing the piano while he's talking. I think he stumbled on this one TARDIS called Christianity, and the more he explores the inside of the claims, the TARDIS, I think he's finding that the TARDIS truly is bigger on the inside, and he doesn't know how to rationalize it or piece it together, but he's recognizing how the claims are also solidified in certain, just in psychology and story dynamics and kind of like our social upbringing and how we're wired, and in the mind. He's recognizing how it's a structure that goes beyond its own foundation, and I guess it can be found, its claims or foundations can be found influencing more than just itself. It's not its own, Christianity in the Bible, I guess it's not its own book divorced from, I guess, reality. And so that's kind of ambiguous way to say it, but I think he's recognizing the multifaceted connections that this claim seems to be, and it truly is bigger on the inside, this TARDIS. And so as he's trying to talk with Harris, who has already all religions are terrible, and what I would say is I think 99.9% of what he's saying is correct. And what I think is that Jordan Peterson has found that 0.01%, and he's communicating with that discovery to someone who has already blanketed it, and so it ends up sounding like, and even like Jordan Peterson, I think, is now then had to expand his discoveries to other religions that don't deserve that same discovery or that same depth that he has found in Christianity. And so he tries to justify the other religions, not just kind of stick on Christianity, but he found something, and he was kind of forced to have to, spread the butter, or a little too much butter, or little brother, blah, blah, that's words. Whatever Bilbo Baggins said about butter over too much bread, and so it ends up kind of thinning out, and he's already talking to somebody who isn't wrong, and a lot of that religion has these terrible side effects, but I would say that Jordan Peterson has found that one strand that I would guess you could say the perfect strand, but it's a hair compared to the rest of everything else that he found. I would say he literally found the needle in the haystack, but it's so minute to the rest of the topic, and so I think either he doesn't realize the I don't know, I don't want to say that, but it's just like maybe he realizes the importance of what he found, but then he was kind of trapped to have to adapt it to the rest of the conversation, which it does not service those other things. Now we can say that other religions might be a reflection of our psyche and how we're trying to. I mean, he would kind of start to justify like us trying to recognize certain moral patterns, and how different religions are the different moral patterns, that and rationalizing them in the book. And so then Harrison would be like, well, then we're in the 21st century, it's time to move on. But so he was kind of forced to try to justify and rationalize some things that may not have been strong enough. But so it just kind of makes me wonder, like him discovering this little bit, what would I feel like he was trapped to be able to really express what he was wanting to say, because he was talking to somebody who already dismissed all religions. And so to hear Jordan Peterson vouched for Christianity, and in Harrison's mind is all the terrible things that Christians did in the name of God. But unfortunately, I would have to say those were not Christians. Those were just people who adopted under their allegiance, but weren't truly in that faith in the true sense, because I think Jordan Peterson recognized the true strand of it. And if you take away the junk that people have made it to be or perverted it, I think he found the pearl in the field. And he's still kind of, I guess, trying to figure things out. So then my question to Jordan is, okay, so there's a book called The Peace Child, and it's about this missionary group who goes to Papua New Guinea to meet these people called the Sawi people. And the Sawi people, what they do is that they fatten each other up with friendship for slaughter. So basically what that means is, if I were to approach you and I'm being so nice and kind to you, but in the back of my mind I'm actually trying to see how far I can get with you believing that I'm truly for your benefit and your good, so that I can kill you in the end. And what that does is that it brings me like power and kind of like even honor to my tribe, that I was able to fatten you up with such friendship and then go behind your back and kill you. And so this is what's happening, or was happening, I don't know if it still is, but happening in the Sawi people. And so when the missionaries came over, they were sharing the story of Jesus, and this is going back to David Peterson's topic about story structure, because I think he recognizes the importance of how certain story structures are very prevalent or important to our psyche, and how the hero's journey and other just different structures of story go to, I guess, insinuate potential greater things. But when the missionaries were talking to the Sawi people, they thought that Judas was the hero of the story, because he was the one that fattened Jesus up with friendship and then turned him into slaughter. And so they thought that he was the main character and the hero of the story, which was completely contrary to what the missionaries were expecting. And so then they were stuck as to figure out how do they express what Jordan Peterson would probably call the fundamental nature of storytelling to them, because they have a completely different moral worldview that shifted their what they valued in story. And I think the more you look into cultures, you'll see that different cultures are going to value, and even just every person is going to value different types of storytelling. And that I would, divorcing myself from the topic a little bit, I would say is a reflector of the condition of the people. But then it goes into, what is the true right and wrong and all that stuff. But yeah, so it'd just be interesting to hear Jordan Peterson's thought on that. And if Jordan Peterson, if you're or watching this, which I'll be gladly honored, the book's called Peace Child, and there's an interesting way how the missionaries found a way to bridge that gap to the people. And so if you want to read it, I guess you can find that out for yourself and just figure out, or find out just kind of like, how do you bridge that gap and whatnot. And so it's called The Peace Child. So anyway, so that's just kind of my assessment of the topic, or just the debate. And I was not upset, it was just kind of like there is a huge misunderstanding, miscommunication, because both of them are right. Unfortunately, Sam Harris has the correct observation for the mass majority, and Jordan Peterson is also correct, I would say. I mean, yes, there might be bias, because I also too am a Christian, or I don't know if he's Christian, but I am a Christian. And so his assessment in finding the true value of Christianity and seeing how it integrates more than just the book itself, I think he is also then correct. But it's such a minority part of his argument that no one else is going to have the depth of his understanding, except potentially other believers who adapt to this, but like who are Christians. Only they will like recognize it. And so how do you bridge that gap between them? And so that's kind of like, what do you do? And so at least I, that's my assessment of them. And maybe Sam Harris hearing what Jordan Peterson's trying to say, that there is this maybe potentially this one strand of that is untouched by human imperfection, but then it gets perverted by humanity. But if you divorce humanity from it in their imperfections, how does this book stand, or just Christianity and whatnot? So if you guys have watched it, I would love to hear your thoughts. Jordan Peterson or Sam Harris, if you watch this, welcome. I would love to hear your thoughts. And actually, Jordan Peterson, I want to know what you mean by you live as if God exists. I haven't found a place where you define what that means, because that can mean a lot of things, because you also you won't necessarily claim that Jesus rose from the dead. So, but maybe you mean God is I don't know. But you define what God was, and you I think maybe it's just that you recognize that there is a greater thing out there in the nether regions of existence, and so maybe that's what you mean just by you respond to it being, or you respond that there is something out there, but you don't know what it is yet potentially, and you're leaning toward, I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but anyways, I would like to hear from y'all, and yeah, just your guys' comments if you've watched it. I'm gonna I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna press the button now. So I'll see you guys in another video, another life. You never know, and peace out.